Tav Chav Ches Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top. Rav Zera, ki avacholish megirsa, when Zera, when he was tired, when he was exhausted, so it was too difficult to focus on learning. He would sit at the entrance of the yeshiva of Rav Yehuda Bar Ami. Omar, he said, ki nafki val Rabbanan. He said, when the Rabbanan come out, he said, what I'll do is, I'll be machabed them. So he was too exhausted to go into the base medrash and participate with them, but he said, I will sit over here, stand up before them, give them kavod, and he'll have schar for that. Meaning he'll do the mitzvah of being machabed talmidei chachamim. Nafak also Yenuka the Beirav. So then a Yenuka, a young boy, came out. And he came out from the yeshiva, Amrle, my Agmar Charab. And he said to him, what did your Rebbe teach you? What did he teach you today? Amrle, he answered, Kshuz Bori Pri Adam. He said, for hops, the bracha for hops that you make on hops is Bori Pri Adam. Chazir Shahakol Niyah Bidvora. For green grain, it's Shahakol. Amrle, Rav Zera says, it should be just the opposite. Hi, Ma'araka Marbi. He said, the green grain is nourished from the ground. So that should be a Bori Pri Adama. V'hai, Ma'aviraka Marbi. But the hops don't grow from the ground. They get nourished from the air, from the moisture in the air. And therefore, it should not be a Bori Pri Adama. It should be just the opposite. The hilchsa ki Yenuka de Beirav. However, the halacha is like the Yenuka de Beirav. My time, what's the reason? Hi, Gemar Pri. He says because the hops are Gemar Pri, they're fully ripened. So that's considered a Pri. You make a Bori Pri ha'adama. V'hai lav Gemar Pri, but the green grain is not fully ripened. So it's not appropriate to say Pri. It's not considered a Pri because it's not fully ripened. Umain to comrade and that tiny that you said, that Haima Ara Karabe, that the green grain that has nourishment from the ground. So there it should be a Bori Pri Adama. V'haima Avira Karabe, but the hops are nourished from the air, from the atmosphere, from the moisture in the air, and not from the ground. So it shouldn't be a Bori Pri Adama. Lohi, it's not so. Kajos Nami Ma'ara Karabe. The hops also get nourishment from the ground. You're telling him that it doesn't because it just grows on the surface of shrubs, on shrubs and other branches. It doesn't have roots in the ground, so it doesn't grow from the ground. No, it's not so. When we cut down the shrubs, and the hops die. So you see, its nourishment is not only from the atmosphere and from the moisture in the air. It's yonik from the ground. Through the bush, through the shrubs, it's yonik from the ground. So it also gets unika from the ground. So therefore, the appropriate bracha for the hops is a Bori Pri Adama. It gets nourished from the ground. It's called a Pri. Whereas the greens, we talk about the greens that are not ripe. So they're not ripe. So it's not appropriate to make on them a Bori Pri Adama because the green grain is not fully ripe. And it's not considered a Pri. Coming back to Eruv, so the Gemara says, "Bekafni saying Maharvin with non-ripe dates, you say you can't make an Eruv, you can't use these types of dates for an Eruv." I Vatanya, we learned in the Brisa, Korn Nikach B'Kesav Meiser. The hearts of palm, you can use them with the money of Meiser Sheni. You can use that money to buy the hearts of palm. Hearts of palm are edible, so it's considered something that can be used for Kesav Meiser. It's a Primi Pri, and it's Gedule Karka. So it should be edible. It is edible, and therefore it should be used. It could be used through the Kesav Meiser. So Kor is Nikach B'Kesav Meiser Ve'em Matamatu Masaychlim, but it is not Matamatus Eichlim. It's not considered to be an Eichel. It's not considered to be an Eichel. So what does that mean? That if it's you can buy and use with Kesav Meiser, but it's not considered to be an Eichel. Well, for Kesav Meiser, it has to be, if you're using something Kesav Meiser, it has to be something that you can eat. It has to be something that you're using it for food. So what does this mean? So Taisus explains as follows. He says, it's not called an Eichel, meaning, because he says, since the hearts of palm normally what happens, it's a soft part of the new growth on the bark of the trunk of the palm tree. It's soft, and it can be cooked, or it can be preserved, and people can eat it. But normally, it's not planted for that purpose, because if you remove it, you'll destroy the tree. So the way to explain it is as follows. So people don't plant at a daita dekara. The people don't plant at a daita dekara because it will ruin the tree. So meaning, even though it's a soft part of the tree, and even though it's edible, but it's not called an oichel. It's a tree. It's eating a soft part of the tree. But because in the meantime it's soft, it's a primi pri. It grows from the ground, and it's a primi pri, and it grows from the tree, which reproduces, and it grows from the ground, and it's edible. So therefore, you can use kesef meiser to purchase this. It's something that you eat, or you could eat, and it grows from the ground. But it's not defined as an oichel. An oichel is something which is, that's a definition of it. That is how the overriding characteristic. This is a tree. Now, a tree is not makabel tumas oichel. A tree, raw materials are not makabel tuma. If you take wood and you make it into a kli, it's makabel tuma. Tumas oichel is something which is defined as an oichel. That means that its primary characteristic is oichel. This is a tree. It's not an oichel. It happens to be an edible tree. So as far as kesef meiser, you can use money for kesef meiser to purchase it. But it's not makabel tumas oichel. It's not makabel tumas oichel. So therefore it says the core is nikah b'chesef meiser ba'vein matam tumas oichel. Ukfania is the unripe dates. Nikachas b'kesef meiser. You can purchase it with kesef meiser. Umetamas to mesaychel, and it is metamas sochel. There it is metam. It is considered to be an oichel. So what do you see? That it's considered to be an oichel, and so therefore the question is, why can't you use it for an eruv? So review, just to continue the brisa, to finish off the brisa review, he said that the car is considered like wood, except that you can use kesef meiser with it. So we'll see in the Gemara what's the difference between that and what the Tanakama, the Tanakama said the exact same thing. The more we'll discuss it. And kefanios are like a fruit in all respects. But you don't have to take meiser from them. They're potter from meiser. They're considered like a fruit, which is potter from meiser. So what do we see in the brisa? That we see that the kfanios, the non-ripe dates, that are makabel to mazoichel. That means it's considered an eichel. If it's considered an eichel, why can't you use it for an eruv? The Gemara answers, Hasan ben Ischani. That's referring to the case where it's the male palm trees. The palm trees have, so to speak, zocher and nekeva. And the nekeva one has, that's what it has, the abundance of fruit, and has the sweet dates, the sweet fruit, and the abundance of it. The zocher, now in order to grow properly, the trees, you need the male and the female, the zocher and the nekeva. But the zocher itself does not produce many fruit. The dates that it produces are few, and they never fully ripen. So they never fully ripen. So in that case, we say that it's metamasuch oichlin because this is its final stage. If we're talking about the regular dates from a tree which is in a keva, they reach a full state of maturity of being ripe. And so therefore, prior to that stage, it's not yet called the oichel. The oichel is when it reaches its full state. And that's what people leave it on the tree and they plant it for that purpose. Prior to that, so the kefania is where we're saying that you cannot use it for an eruv, is when it's unripe, but it could become ripe. Over here, where we're saying is tumas oichelim is talking by the zocher, which never fully ripens. This is its final stage. It's as ripe as it's going to be. So, and now it's considered an oichel. True, it's an inferior oichel, but it's still considered to be an oichel. Well, if we're talking about these nischani, would he say that it's potter from Meiser? Why would it be potter from Meiser? He says that he didn't mention the non-ripe, the non-maturing figs, ela inyan Meiser bilvad, only as far as halach as Meiser. They are considered fruit, and they have to Meiser them. Since they never fully ripen, this is the final stage, so therefore it's considered a fruit in that respect that you're chayev to take meiser from it. Now, if we're talking about the nischani, you're talking about the dates that never fully ripen. Why would it be potter from meiser? So that can't be. So we can't be talking about that case. That's true. We're not talking about the nischani. We're not talking about the zachar and the male palm trees. So what's the pshat? So therefore, we're saying that it's mekabel tumas oichlim. Why is it that you cannot use it for an eruv? But tumas oichlim are different. It's not the same criteria as being a food for tumas oichlim and a food for eruv. Because you can sweeten it by heating it up or putting it over a fire. By putting it over a fire, you can sweeten it up, so it can be made into something sweeter. So here also, by the unripe dates, which since it can be sweetened through the fire, by putting it on the fire, it's considered to be an eichel. It is considered to be an eichel as far as tumas eichel is concerned. But you can't use it for an eruv. It's not usable for an eruv, because as far as the eruv is concerned, we say that right now it is not considered, right now it is barely edible, so therefore it's not considered to be an eichel as far as eruv is concerned. So why don't we say the same thing by the hearts of palm? Why don't we say the same thing by the hearts of palm, that, well, by the hearts of palm, if you boil it, etc., it's edible. Now, we said by the hearts of palm, it's not mekama to Masechet, because it's not defined as an eichel, it's defined as an eitz. But over here, if we're saying hoyer lamaskan and you can sweeten, and it becomes good tasting, then it's considered to be an eichel. Why don't we say this as far as the hearts of palm is concerned? So Tosfos says it can be easily sweetened, but the hearts of palm, the kar, he says, is different because it's like a wood. And it's not easily, so when you have to boil it, it has to process it, and it requires a whole processing. So since it requires processing, it's not easily sweetened, it's not defined as an eichel. This, very easily you put it on the fire, and it makes it sweet and edible. But the hearts of palm, that's not the case by the hearts of palm. L'chera, Tosfos didn't have to come on to that. L'chera, Tosfos could have said, is because you don't plant the palm trees for the hearts of palm, because Tosfos mentioned earlier, if you take it and eat it, you're going to ruin the tree. So therefore, it's not considered an eichel; it's considered an eitz. But over here, this type of fruit, so you're not going to ruin the tree. The fruit grows on from the tree, from the palm tree, and these type of dates can be easily sweetened. So therefore, it's considered to be an eichel as far as tumas eichel. But as far as eruv is concerned, nevertheless, it's not kosher for an eruv because it requires some form of processing, and for an eruv you need fruit that is edible without being processed further. It has to be readily edible. Where did Rabbi Yochanan say this? So we said Rabbi Yochanan said hoyer l'maskan. Here also we're saying by the dates is hoyer l'maskan. Where did Rabbi Yochanan say this din, that hoyer l'maskan, that you can sweeten? And on the phone, we learned the brisa shkedim hamorim. If you have bitter almonds, ketanim chayavim, the small ones that they aren't fully grown, you are chayav with meiser. You have to meiser them. Gedolim peturim. The large ones are potter from meiser, because the small ones are sweeter, and therefore it's considered to be an eichel yechayiv and meiser. But the large ones, when they grow, when they get fully grown, they get very bitter. They're not edible. They're potter from meiser. Mesukin, but sweet almonds. So previously we were talking about shkenim hamorim, but mesukim, sweet almonds, gedolim chayavim. It's just the opposite. The gedolim are chayavim when they're fully grown. That's when they're sweet and they're edible. So chayim b'maisa katan peturim. The small ones are potter. Rav Shimon Rav Yisrael Shum Aviv, he says that the bitter ones, whether they're larger and small, are potter, because the small ones are not fully grown and the large ones are bitter. So he says, as far as the shkenim amarim are concerned, they're both potter. But some say that they're both chayiv. So why should they be both chayiv? The ones which are bitter ones, the bitter ones that when they get large, they're very bitter, you don't eat them. And on that, Rabbi Eloah, Rabbi Chanina, B'tzipara, that he says that he said that they're both potter. So so the one we said both patur we understand, but the one says that that they're both chayiv, or the larger ones are bitter, so why should it be chayiv? On the Rav Yechon on Yudea Oros. This is where he said that you can sweeten it through the fire. So one says is Liftur and Haya Rabbi Chanina B'tzipura, that they're both pot. But the one who says even though the large ones are bitter, but since you can easily sweeten it up through the fire, it's considered to be an eichel and you're chayav. Amar Mar Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, he says, the hearts of palm are considered like wood, except that you can use kesef meiser, the money from meiser sheni, to purchase them. Hainu Tanakama. Isn't that exactly what the Tanakama said? What's the difference between them? Amar Abaya, shlaka v'tigna ika beinayim. The chiluk is that if you cook it shlika extensively, or you fry it in oil, that's a chiluk. So according to the Tanakana, he would hold that you cook them, now it's a meichel. But according to Rabbi Yehuda he says no, it's whole dvar elish nika b'kesav a meiser, and therefore he says even if you cook it, it's still not considered to be an eichel. Is there a mandamer who says that if you cook it, you boil it, you fry it, it's not considered to be an eichel? Once you've processed it, it's not an eichel. We learned in the Braisa or Vashilya ematam to Masechet. The or and the shilya, the sack of the birth of the animal, these aren't considered eichel. So the hides, the skins, they're not considered eichel. They're not matam to Masechet. But however, so or v'shalei matamis mizhoichlam. However, or sheshlaka v'shalei shechishav. But if they boiled the skin, or the shlaka the shechishav, he had das, he had intention to eat it. Now normally they're not considered eichlim. But if you process it or you have an intention to eat it, and it's for you, it's not mos. It is metamasum. So you see, even by or that your shloka that is metamatum. How could you say that according to Rabbi Yehuda that even after you do shlika with the hearts of palm that it's not metamasum? Hello, Oma Rava Ikibainaya Brocha. It says Chanami. That's not the chilik. If there was shlika, then it would be considered a neichel. The nafkamina is, what bracha do you make on the hearts of palm? Dit markor, and the kor, Rav Yehuda Amar Bari Priyadama. He says you make a Bari Priyadama. Ushmuel Amar Shahakal Ni Bidvar. And Shmuel says you make a Shahakal. Rav Yehuda Amar Bari Priyadama. Why do you make a Bari Priyadama? Uchlu. So it's an eichel. It grows from the ground. You make a bari priyadama because it's an eichel. Ushmul Amar Shahakal Niya Midvara. He says no, you make a shahakal kevan shesefil hakshes lemavarchan alvei bari priyadama. Since it's going to harden and it'll become part of the bark of the tree, part of the trunk of the tree, you don't make a bari priyadama. Meaning, it's not considered a pri. Rav Yehuda says you make a bari priyadama because it's an eichel and it grows from the ground. Shmuel says, well, that's true. However, it's not a pri. It's not a fruit. It's seifel ha'akshus. You can't call it a fruit. It's called, therefore, as part of the tree. You don't make a borei pri adam, you make a shahakol. Omer leShmuel Rav Yehuda Shinunai, he said, sharp one. He called him sharp with he was very with his logic. He was very sharp. Shinunai kavasek mistaber. He said to Rav Yehuda, he praised him. He says it's mistaber in the svara, like you were saying, like you Rav Yehuda is saying, that you make a borei pri adam. Why? Because snowing radishes, the seifel ha'akshus, is also would become hard. If it was left on the ground, it would become hard. Nevertheless, you make a borei pri adama. So you see that even though it's something that's seifel ha'akshus, you make an adama. But the Gemara says, loihi, it's not so. It's not in the pugla, because radishes, they're planted to eat it in the soft part of it. To eat it when it's in the form of a softer radish, and when to eat it as a vegetable. But people do not plant the palm tree to eat the hearts of palm, like we said before, because that would ruin the tree. And even though he praised him, Shmuel praised Rav Yehuda, the halacha is like Shmuel. The halacha is like Shmuel, that the bracha is shahakol. You make a bracha as shahakol. Gufa Amar Yehuda Amar Rav Kishus v'chozid ma'arben u'marchem alem borei pri adam. So he says you could use them for an erev, the hops and the green grain, and the bracha is adama. Kishus bekama, how much do you need of this for the erev? So bread, we said, is a mazon shtei sudas. If you're making an erev with hops, what's the shiur? What's the quantity? Where it says kadam Rav Chil k'molayad, a fistful, a handful, achanami k'molayad. Chaziz bekama, how much do you need for a chaziz? Amar Rav Baratuvi bar Yitzchak, he said, Amar Rav k'moy uzilaisa dikari. Like a bundle, they had standard bundles that the farmers, the laborers put together. They bundled it. It's a standard bundle. That's what you use for an erev. He said you can make an erev with kalya, the stalk of a plant, the hard stalk of a plant. Bekalya salkataita. You think the hard stalk of this plant, you could use it? It's like wood. So how can you use that for an erev? That's not edible. Ella biyarka, the kalya, the green, the soft part. V'kama amar v'chil kimloya yad. He said a handful. That's the shiur. So when we say that the shiur of eruv is mazon shtei sudas, so that means bread that you would eat 2 sudas worth of bread. When we talk about these other things that you're using, it's also a mazon shtei sudas. It's how much of the hops, the vegetables, what would be the amount that if a person had a meal and he would use this and eat it in his meal, how much of it would he eat in 2 meals? So these are the shiurim that we'd eat in shtei sudas of these types of things.